What is up, Bitcoin miners? We are back. This is the Build a Mine podcast. It has been a little over a week since we recorded last. We had the Nashville conference, which was a lot of fun. It was super exciting. It was my first large Bitcoin conference, and I got to tell you, if you haven't been to a conference like that or a conference in general, you guys need to go. Will did not get to go with us this time. He had some fatherly duties to attend to, but that's okay. We missed you, Will.
Yeah, I'm bummed I didn't get to be with the team. It's a great event. I've gone to that event a number of times, and they do an incredible job. And I could tell you guys are having a blast and killing it out there. So,
Man,
kudos to the team.
Well, for the audience that they don't know, we actually premiered our new business, the Bitcoin mining world. And it was a lot of fun. It was crazy. I didn't get to go see any of the talks and the speakers because I was too busy sitting at our booth doing interviews over and over and over again. I think I interviewed roughly 100 people during that time, and I spent probably like 8 hours a day doing it. So it was really good to sharpen my skills as an interviewer, get to ask some really cool, quick, short questions and just talk to people. But I think the highlight of my entire week was I got this is going to be kind of nerdy, but I got a Bitcoin trading card, a Guy Swan Bitcoin trading card, and that was pretty wicked. And then it actually got signed by the man himself. So that was the highlight of my weekend. And so anyways, I want to talk to you guys about some things. So, the Mastermind Club, which is our club that the Bitcoin mining world puts on, is the club that you're going to want to go to when you want to learn how to build a Bitcoin mining operation. Whether you're building a Bitcoin mining operation on a small scale in your home and you want to, hash out your house, or you want to step up into a next level situation and start hashing out an entire building, you want to go to the Mastermind because we provide you detailed roadmaps, project runways, all kinds of guidance, hand-holding, for lack of a better word, to help you build effective and efficient mining operations from start to finish. We basically help you connect the dots from A to Z, and anybody who's trying to get into this industry knows that mistakes happen. It's a difficult place to get into, and Will could tell you that. But the Mastermind is specifically designed to help you not make mistakes and connect those dots. Every single month we do a deep dive into specific critical topics like site development, procurement, electrical infrastructure, contract negotiation, all kinds of cool things. So if you guys want to find out more, go to bitcoinminingworld.com, hit the Mastermind link, and just join us. I'm on the calls every single week, every single month. We're there, and we're helping Bitcoiners like yourself build the next generation of Bitcoin mines. So let's see. Today we have a really cool guest. We have Daniel Conover from Artemis Tech. Artemis Tech is building next generation HPC data center solutions. And he specifically told me they are not containers. They are the size of buildings. So we're really excited to talk to Daniel because he's been in the space for a very long time. He's got a lot of interesting takes, and we want to hear from him. So let's bring Daniel up to the stage, Will, and we'll introduce him. What's up, Daniel? Welcome to the Build a Mine podcast.
What's happening, Trevor? What's happening, Will?
Great to have you here. It's another beautiful day over here in my neck of the woods. I don't know how beautiful it is out in your guys' parts of the world, but every day is a good day.
Yeah, we're going through a heat wave out here. People ask us all the time, like, what's the most challenging environment you operate at? And we're out of Wenatchee, Washington. I'm like, Wenatchee, Washington. We get cold as shit and we get hot as hell.
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to build solutions in your own hometown that, can work in both those high heat environments and, low temp environments as well.
Yeah, correct. I mean, we have to use water abatement curtains, things like that, like, variable frequency drives to get our fans ramped way down in the winter. And we do recircuit a lot of our facilities too. And these facilities were built a long time ago.
Yeah.
Speaking of a long time ago, I mean, I know you've been in the space since like 2013. That's right around, early 2013 is when I kind of dove headlong into just trying to work full time in the space. And for a miner, especially, that is an epically long time. I mean, a good, successful mining operation might only last one cycle. And that can be considered a success for some miners. And I'm just, I think your background is super interesting. So if you would just kind of tell us how you got into Bitcoin initially, how your time at Amazon Web Services led to your time in Bitcoin, and then we can kind of dive deep on early mining stuff.
Right on. You guys want the long format or the 32,000 foot view?
Man, whatever you feel comfortable telling us. I mean, we've only got so much time here. I know Bitcoiners
Sure.
can talk for a long time, but give us the
So-
synopsis, and then we'll dive deep into it.
It was 2011 when I first discovered it. I mean, like everybody, you read the white paper, you stay up for 2 days straight, you start figuring out how you can like mine on your computer, realize really quickly like, well, actually back then I was mining on a MacBook Air, and I was getting, it was 2011, getting 50 Bitcoin a week roughly. They had almost like no value. It was just, I mean, I still have my MacBook Air because of that. Like, it's like my trophy. It's my first miner.
I can't relate to that.
But it wasn't really had any value. I mean, Coinbase didn't exist. You had to go on like
Yeah.
IRC channels. I mean, this is where, we were joking before starting the pod here, but this is why my wife thought what I was doing was illegal, because I'm explaining to her how like darknet and Tor works and stuff to communicate with these people, and like randomly I'd like see people, and I was one of the larger local Bitcoin traders in 2013, 2014. But I watched it run up. And so originally I was an electrical engineer doing like AWS design. It was a great time. I mean, it's like being in a fraternity. It's like the best time you never want to have again. Like Amazon's like working for the devil, but it's fun, man. It's fun.
We had a good time, but I never want to go back.
No, I mean, there's like, they have like, they have kegerators everywhere, and like all these, like they do it so you stay there for 60, 70 hours a week, right?
Oh, Jesus.
You don't even realize when you're going home at 9 o'clock at night, but they got it dialed.
It's like a casino. There's no clocks, no windows. You don't know how long you've
All
been
blue
there.
lights. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Okay.
So I actually, through local Bitcoins, was doing a whole lot of local Bitcoins trading under the name Seattle Miner. And I had a company approach me like, hey, do you know how to run ASICs? I was like, sure. They put these ASICs into a tier like 3 data center, like 25 cents a kilowatt hour. Started running them, and I started realizing like the economics. This is in downtown Seattle, and it was like very, 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 very easy to see that kilowatt hour input was the number one thing that you had to manage. And this company, I had like a managed service agreement with them. My primary focus at the time was like local Bitcoins, and like I was working with a couple people on like starting up, how do you create, this is like pre Coinbase, like how do you actually turn local Bitcoins into like a real business? And then I started doing some research and realized that I'm actually standing on top of our first data center, the one I'm talking about right now. And so I realized very quickly, if I could convince this client to build out a facility out in the Wenatchee region, Wenatchee, Washington State, back then the power price was 1.8 cents. And going from 25 cents a kilowatt hour to 1.8, I basically told them, hey, I'm going to do a sweat equity deal. I'll do the design, the engineering, the building, all of this. And then I want to host you guys. And so I convinced them to do that. My very first Bitcoin miner, they were a Ponzi scheme. And so these guys completely blew up, and I got stuck with all of their hardware. And that was my first experience of like, what, excuse me, like, what the fuck do I do with all this equipment that I don't own that's tied up in this? And so it was like, I had to deal with like legal and contracts. I'm an engineer. I always joke now that I play a lawyer on TV, but because you don't know what you're going to have to deal with. And so, I mean, that was a super, super stressful time. And it was an international legal case. About 6 months in, it was a bunch of Sponduli SP10s. Those are the best miner ever made to this day.
What makes them so good? What makes them better than
Well, first
I've
of all,
never even heard of it.
First of all, they're rack mountable. Like, the reason the rack mount hasn't changed since the 60s when it was first introduced is because it is a perfect design. I mean, it is flawless. Like, H100, they're all racks all the way to like any telecom, and they were rack mountable. And a Sponduli SP10 was 1.1 terahash at 1300 watts,
Oh
which
wow.
is
Okay.
wild to think about. Like, think about that efficiency is terrible. Um, they could handle extreme heats. I never had to really think about cooling or anything, just air movement. And we had switched and metered PDUs, which even to this day in this space is kind of uncommon. So once I started running those, I thought I was living over in the Seattle area, Bellevue, Washington. I could remote into the facility, and every morning I would just reboot a few of the machines that went down. And uh, eventually I built a script, and for 6 months I thought I was like the smartest person in the world because I was just mining Bitcoin, paying utilities. That was that. And then everybody who's new to Bitcoin learns about difficulty. And back then, I mean, you'd have 30% difficulty jumps, And
Oh, yeah.
so then it started to be like, okay, how does this game work? And so that was a 300 kilowatt facility. Now this facility is 1 meg. We went to 1 meg in 2015, which was big for back then. And that's when we really started to get into like hosting and, prop mining on. I kind of have like a philosophy about how to purchase machines, which I can get into.
Yeah.
Please do.
So like right now, Bitmain's going a little crazy with their pricing. Like, it's kind of like they're either expecting the new chip series to be just impossible to upgrade over the next like 3 to 5 years. And so they're pricing these as like almost financial instruments, like with like hedging. I mean, you can see they've changed their whole,
Mhm.
it's spot. It's not buy, it's spot, right? Or futures. And so it's almost like they're admitting that chip design has hit a limit. Which if you don't know, I mean, they're stamped out at TSMC. TSMC themselves hasn't even got their facility fully ramped up that's making these chips. For them to upgrade to the next, what is it going to be, 3 nanometer, is going to cost 20-30 billion dollars. Like, and Bitmain's not going to get priority. I'm sorry. Like, Bitmain versus Nvidia, Bitmain's probably just like way down that list, right? I know they've had some issues in the past with Bitmain, but Bitmain might be, based on their model, admitting that these machines are going to be good for 3 to 5 years. I mean, you've watched it in every cycle. Like the S1, we had S1s, we had S3s, we had all of them. S1 was good for like 3 months, and then that was like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. Really, the S9 was the first high longevity miner. I mean, we ran those damn things for like 3-4 years.
Dude, people are still running them.
Yeah, if you're in like, if you have a dirty power deal, then you're definitely still running S9s. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially from like a home miner perspective, like the S9s are what everybody says to get into because it's cheap. You can pick them up for like $80. You plug them in and they just kind of go. They're like tanks.
If you're willing to pay shipping, I have about 3,000 S9s. So if anyone listening to this hits me up and says, "Here's $50 to ship a box," I will send you one.
Hey, I might hit you up for that, for some S9s, just to give around to like local people in my town. Be like, hey, here's a Bitcoin miner. Figure it out.
Dan, can you expand a little bit on what you mean by dirty power deal and why that's still useful for an older generation miner?
So energy is political, which is total horseshit because humans created it. It's not a scarce resource. 150 years ago, it didn't exist, right? But for some reason, the whole AI crypto bubble lives in this like fight against, like, energy is a scarce resource. We must protect it at all costs, like water. It's like that needs to go away. We need to educate the world on that because honestly, be responsible, have responsible energy. Don't build new coal facilities, honestly. Like, natural gas is great. Obviously, there's renewables. But because energy is political, you can lobby for it if you're in a country that's not like the United States. And it could happen in the United States, but there's things called behind the meter energy. And so behind the meter energy is, let's say China, because people know this has happened in China. I don't mind throwing them under the bus a little bit, but in China, what happened during the great, Bitcoin exodus was a lot of the hydro dams are owned either by a group or a private investor or individual and tied into the CCP's grid. as a Bitcoin miner, you could approach them and say, hey, we're going to build right next to you, and you're going to sell us some energy, and you're going to report less production than you actually produce to the CCP. And then they get a better deal from the Bitcoin miner, call it like 1.5 cents. And I'm not even joking. Like, they were getting deals like that cheap because the CCP might be buying it for 1 cent. And then all of a sudden that extrapolated out, and you had hundreds of megawatts, if not gigawatts, behind the meter like that. And that's why the China ban on mining, it wasn't a ban on mining, it was a ban on unregistered mining happens. You know, in the United States, I'm not saying it can't happen, but like, you know, we're much more capitalistic. To like, they would look at that as being like, you own the dam, you can do whatever the hell you want with the energy. Not always, but it's a little bit more like that. Iran was probably the worst case, where the government subsidizes the fuel, and then they were not providing critical energy to the grid and selling it to Bitcoin miners instead. And so that situation was, I mean, that was terrible. But something like that is where it becomes like unsustainable and things like that. I've definitely changed over the last 11 years my stance. Like, I'm very pro regulation. Regulation does have bad sides to it. You know, things take time and longer, but it allows things to stay stable and not fall apart.
Can you give an example of that? Like, well, you had some transition, because most of us, we are attracted to Bitcoin because of its openness, right, and permissionlessness.
I still am open source forever, right? Like, we use our firewalls we use inside of you know, Artemis throughout is always pfSense. It's an open source piece of technology. Like, Cisco's so locked down. I'm not saying Cisco's bad; they're great. They're expensive, but having like that open source community is fantastic. You know, anytime you get things locked down, you start getting like, me and one of my best friends were just talking about Reddit. It just seems like Reddit became like so one-sided. I remember it 5 years ago just being like this like melting pot of like, you want to be on this side or this side, like you can go argue. And now it just seems so one-sided. And to me, that's where it's like, that's not what I'm promoting. I'm more promoting, like, Coinbase is a great example. You used to be able to go to Coinbase, any email, any bank account, sign up, buy coin. Like, that's kind of crazy if you think about it, because if I want to go pay for a hitman, like, you want to be like absolute crazy, right? You can go buy Bitcoin and be crazy. But now it's like, if you set up a new Coinbase under an LLC with the same owner, I just went through this, they connect that Coinbase to your other Coinbase, and they say, prove that these companies aren't merged as one. And that's where it becomes like kind of a pain in the ass. But you see the price of coin, and it's a direct reflection of regulation. And that's an opinion, but you wouldn't have your gigantic BlackRocks, and you wouldn't have those guys coming in if it wasn't a solid, stable asset class.
Right.
Yeah, as stable as it could possibly be at this moment. It's definitely still pretty volatile for a lot of people.
The best comment I've heard is that oil and gas is still more volatile than crypto. Crypto's never gone negative.
Yeah,
I guess
that's so true.
Point. That's a good point. Why do you think it's never gone negative?
Well, because I mean, how can it go negative? It's too liquid, right?
Right.
Like, if you have coins on a sheet, you're not going to have to get stuck with them. It's not a physical asset.
But, I got you.
Yeah, and government price controls also, I kind of think, made ONG have that phenomenon.
I know guys that were trying to take those contracts off people's hands during that time. It was a wild time, man.
That's crazy. Yeah. Just to back up a little bit, you were kind of going through the generations of different ASICs. And so, like, when you got into mining, ASICs,
ASICs didn't exist.
No. ASICs didn't exist, right?
ASICs
I remember, you know, because when I plowed headlong into the space, you know, I, of course, downloaded Bitcoin Core, and I was like, I'm mining, but I'm never going to hit anything, you know, and just on my laptop, right? And then, then the block eruptors started coming out from, you know, and just then the machines got bigger. So you were talking about the robustness of certain generations of machines and kind of where things are, you know, how we got from like the S9 to where we are today. And what do you think is the lifespan of some of these newer generation machines after like the workhorse S9.
Depends on the facility it's running in. So if we want to talk from like a chip perspective, I look at the S19 as having a couple more years. And the S19 came out, what, 2020? Does that sound right? 2020, 2021? Maybe it's shipped in 21. You're probably going to get a 4 or 5 year life cycle out of that. The next one could be like, I don't want to give anyone financial advice by saying this, but it could be like a 4 to 7 year product, depending on your power price. That being said, we typically only buy used equipment. Like I said, I have the purchase philosophy, but you gotta be careful about your facility. And, the primary thing is filtration. Like, what the fuck? Filter your shit, guys. Like, I hate getting machines that are just full of West Texas dust. And it's like, you guys, like, it's not that hard. Like, I can give you products that cost $200 that can do a full megawatt for $200 of filtration. I really don't like seeing when people use the home style filters either. They're not designed for that load. I actually had one of my friends yesterday. We've been talking about electrostatic currents over those things and whatnot. They're not designed for the airflow we're throwing at them. Unless you're swapping those out every 2 weeks, sure. But
that's fascinating because I'll just interject briefly about the operation I'm trying to get going it's a stranded gas project. We have two small containers and trying to get them up to full capacity, but we're using, those MERV filters that probably work in your furnace and stuff. Yeah. I mean, but like we had thought about, and there's a ton of dust in northern Wyoming, right? It's a desert climate, and all of that. But we thought we would change them out like every 3 to 6 months, and I mean, we haven't had like an issue where we needed to clean them excessively, but we're not at capacity either. So I'm just curious, like, about the filtration. I can tell you're passionate about it.
I've just bought so much. Like, this is one of those things where every time I talk to people, I'm like literally I can throw up on Present. I'm not sponsored by Zorro or anything like that in any way. There's a million places to do this, but like this product, and my text would say, don't buy the fiberglass, get the poly. Fiberglass works better, but it's just a roll of industrial filtration, right? Don't try to wash it, throw it away when you're done with it. But all it is, it's MERV 8 rated, which might not be high enough if you're doing HPC. It's definitely high enough for Bitcoin. The MERV scale is just a filtration scale of how many microns it can take out of the air. MERV 8 is sufficient. You're going to get like pollen coming through. Smoke is going to come through for sure. You got to check this though, because we worked with a company that was at a ferrosilicon plant, which is a metal that came through the filter, and it fucked up a bunch of equipment. Because you have to remember, and I'll stop sharing, but you have to remember that dust is explosive. So you think about like a lot of dust from a cabinet factory, you light that on fire, it will explode. But even on the micro level, it goes onto the equipment, finds its way to the ASIC, you get a little boop. And you'll hear this in dirty facilities. You'll actually hear like little crackle pops, and you're like, what am I hearing? Is that electricity? No, it's just dust exploding, just popping. And if it gets behind the ASIC's heatsink, now you have the heatsink off, now you have a hot ASIC, now you have a hash board down, now the controller board is mad, and a lot of the new machines are like, you know what, I'm not even going to hash, something's wrong.
And one chip goes out and the whole machine goes down.
Right. And so your freaking $100 filter I just showed you can save your $1,000 machinery, but people are like, we're fine, we don't need that as much. It's like, oh, guys, please.
You're like, do the work necessary, man.
Please, it's so simple.
Isn't there? I also heard one time about like somehow like there's dust and hair particles can like transfer the power from one transistor to the next and can like cause them to blow up that way.
Yeah, they could bridge for sure. I mean, especially I've seen so much bad equipment before over the years. People are starting to get better, but operations and maintenance is a thing. You have to have people working on your equipment, even if you don't want to. And filtration is the easiest It's the easiest solution, honestly. But then after that, it's like the data center design itself. So I know I didn't really finish my trek through Bitcoin, but
Yeah,
so
resume where you pick up where
yeah,
you left
yeah,
off. That's fine.
I think I can transition this pretty good. So if you look at our first facility, like this one, we have like raised floors and like nice bus bar. It looks like someone from a data center designed it because I did. And I've had to walk backward, like expensive build backward. Most people do the opposite. They start, how close to free can I get it? And like literally catch machines on fire and overheat equipment, and then start throwing money at it until you kind of find this middle ground between the two. So, the primary thing I've always pitched to everybody, I know anyone listening who knows this, is positive pressure. And it's very, very simple. Like I'm an aviation nerd. When it gets really hot out, what do they have to do with airplanes? They have to ground them. Why? Because the air density is too thin. And so when it's hot, air density thin. When it's cold, air density is heavy, right? And so if you have the same fan pushing, let's call it 70-degree air, let's not say that cold of air, versus 140-degree air, which is something very common you see off the exhaust side, you get about a 15 to 18% difference depending on your density between the two. So it's like your first choice. Would you guys like to have a better performing fan for the same cost or a worse performing fan? For some reason, what do you think? 95% of miners are negative pressure, probably more. So they throw the fan into the hot aisle, suck the heat out. Motors are unhappy. Most motor tags are only 40 degrees C. Exhaust is usually like 50 to 55 degrees C. Wear and tear on your motors is extreme versus the other one is actually running its spec. And then the next thing is there's pros to negative, which I can get into. And there's cons to positive as well. But if you can picture like this room, and anyone listening or you guys walk into an airport, the door opens, what happens? You feel the air push against you, right? Because it's a nice, clean, filtered environment, and it's pushing the particulates out as you come into the environment. And so by keeping if it's calculated correctly, by keeping a positive pressure internally, you get a huge amount of filtration just naturally. And then the next biggest thing is you watch your servers become more efficient, because those 12-volt fans, whether they're 120, 140 mil, they're not great. Like I see you have a shroud on that miner behind you. Like, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That thing works awesome. That AC.
It's great. Yeah, that's a great fan.
Yeah. So I mean, you're doing the exact same thing. You're throwing positive pressure with a much more efficient motor at that, and it's working much, much better.
I got it because it's quieter, but I mean, we'll go with that too. It's definitely running much better than it would have with the stock fans on there.
Exactly. And so now imagine if your whole facility itself was doing that, right? So all your server fans, instead of being starved of air from the air being ripped out of them, they have all this additional air that they can pull from. And it's not like I'm magical, guys. Like the data center industry's been doing this the whole time.
Yeah, the information's been out there for 30 years.
I've gotten into like full-blown arguments with people about this, and I'm like, okay, I need to create like a pro list for negative. The pro list for negative is it's a lot easier to keep the air laminar, and laminar is like you see like water at a park where the water like shoots up nicely. It's nice and smooth, or like you get to one of those high-end faucets, you're like, ooh, that water feels nice. That's like laminar water. Turbulent is when it's like, psh. And so on the downside of positive is that right after the fan, you have a shit ton of turbulent air. And so you have to kind of build your design to control the turbulence. And whereas if it's outside, right, if you're just blasting the air outside into the outside environment, you don't care. And so, you can create more of a laminar flow. It's more simple to design. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah. The pressure and airflow side is something that's really under discussed, I think.
I could talk about it the whole time here, man.
I feel like it's an afterthought from every friend or colleague or, every mine I visited, because I think they all plan to do it for a brief time as long as it's profitable, because they know they're going to, they set up and they're going to be there for a few months, not even a year, and then kind of shut it down when things get too difficult, or, you know, the market environment changes or whatever. One thing you said a few minutes ago that really stuck out to me, and we can get back into air pressure and airflow filtration too, because that's, like I said, I think super educational for all of these aspiring miners in the audience. But
Just trying to keep the longevity up.
right, and
That's what keeps it up.
right, so that's super interesting. Like you said, you look at when you're looking at ASICs, you really only look at the used market. Is that, did I hear that correctly?
Correct.
Like,
yeah.
getting new miners is difficult for a lot of aspiring miners, because, you know, you got to build the relationships with the manufacturers, and it takes a little time. But you can find used miners all over the place. But well, there are different times in the cycle when you can and can't. But what's your appeal to the used machines more so than new machines?
So it's just the predictability of the ROI is that. So I have like a philosophy that is, if I can make my money back, and you have to remember we're industrial scale, so we're sitting in the 50 megawatt range. Like, I know to a lot of like, if a lot of your listeners are green and new, like, we came from nothing. First of all, we came from zero. So, but there's a whole lot of things you can do and have a lot cheaper electricity. You know, our average electricity cost company wide is like 3.8 to 4.2 cents, depending on time of year. So we have a little bit more levers to pull there, I would say. But anything sub 90 days, and these deals do come up where someone wants out, or they're at, 8 cents, and so they're just unprofitable. We're a yes no matter what. So we'll buy that equipment no matter what. I don't care what algorithm it is. The chance of it being able to make its money back is high. 180 days is where I'm going to be buying your like S19J Pros, your miners, your flagship miners that are tried and true. And, I might even dabble in script miners on that, but I would never do, I don't know, maybe you guys are big Caspa miners, but I wouldn't dive into the Caspa mining set.
I'm a Bitcoin miner through and through, man. Like,
yeah, yeah, thank
Same
you.
here.
I mean, we were one of the largest GPU miners until Ethereum, but that was mining Ethereum. To me, that's another Bitcoin type flagship coin, right?
Right.
If 90 days, I'll buy the Caspa miners, but 180 days is challenging. It's really once you break over that 270-day ROI, where you're just forward looking out so far that you're like, where's difficulty going to be? Like, what was 270 days ago? I mean, that we were almost December. Like, do you guys remember what was happening in December? Did you know Bitcoin was going to be as high as it is right now?
Well, I had some, again, my history in the space is very much focused on startups and market, right? So I have I think a good memory of where the market's been in given times. And so obviously with the advent of the ETFs inbound at that time in December, we kind of had a high degree of confidence that the ETFs would happen in January, which did happen, and that would be a big tailwind for the market, which it turned out to be. So, but I don't know. I don't think anyone was expecting us to really get back to the all-time high area so much earlier than the halving, right? And I think that was kind of a surprise to most people in the market. But yeah,
you got a better memory than me, man. I can hardly remember yesterday.
But where the difficulty was, I don't remember. Where other network statistics were, I don't remember.
I mean, I don't remember where that was. I don't know where it's gonna go. And then nobody does. Like, it's shocking to me the amount of increases of difficulty, because we have like this rule of big numbers, right? It's like for Apple to go to $100 billion to a $200 billion company is not that hard. But what are they at now? 2 trillion? For them to get to 4 trillion is that's incredible for them to pull it off. And maybe they will, but it might take 10 years.
Right.
Whereas
they did go from 1 to 2 trillion pretty quickly.
Pretty fast. Yeah. I mean, it's a really bad example, but
that could be, asset prices and money printing, that may
Yeah.
have been the biggest reason why. But yeah, I want to take a brief break and just let the audience know about our conference that's coming up. The Mining Conference will be in Brainerd, Minnesota this September 27th through 29th, and we'd love for you to join us there. So we're going to have a ton of cool miners there, industry leaders. We have thought-provoking speakers already lined up and builders from all over the mining industry. So get your tickets now at theminingconference.com. You can also find more information about it at bitcoinminingworld.com. At the Mining Conference in Brainerd, we will have a 1-day Build a Mine crash course. Typically, we do a 3-day Build a Mine boot camp in person at our location in Wisconsin. And we're compressing that course for the mining conference so that anyone who attends and comes a day early can experience the 1-day crash course of the Build a Mine boot camp, which is a great cost savings and an accelerated program to get a lot out of learning how to repair miners, learning how to model out your business, and learning how to basically run an effective Bitcoin mine. And that's a great opportunity. So make sure you check it out. It's a great place to build professional connections and explore just the limitless potential of what's out there for Bitcoin mining and help grow and decentralize the Bitcoin mining network. So mark your calendars for September 27th through 29th. Go to the website, theminingconference.com, to learn more, and we'll see you in Brainerd, Minnesota. If you want to get back into the mining, airflow, filtration, and pressure discussion, I think that fascinate our audience. So I'll just let you pick up, Dan, somewhere around there.
I wonder how many home miners you guys have sparked.
We hope a lot. Trevor's doing a great job of this, honestly.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, like, I'm a philosopher when it comes to Bitcoin home mining. Like, I think it's going to change the world, and I just can't wait to see like the transition into home mining spaces.
I got a tank I worked with DCX on, and it heats my pool, and it is fantastic.
We have had a number of guests that I would say more than half of our guests, we discuss heat reuse with mining and all the different types of applications, and just decentralizing the mining network, even with things like lottery miners like the BitAxe, which we talked with Scott from BitAxe, and we were like,
that's awesome.
You know if anybody's ever hit a block? And he's like, I'm 99.9% sure nobody's ever hit a block. And then like
until 10 days ago.
I remember seeing that, being like, that's a good ROI.
Yeah, right.
It's just incredible.
I don't even care if it takes 4 years, man. You hit a block with a BitAxe, it's 190 grand right now.
Yeah, but this is just like, we want to stimulate education and like even experimentation and education and the hobbyist nature of these kinds of projects. There's no interest in ROI for some of these people and some of these educational projects, but that's totally fine because you're paying your tuition and learning a ton. And then who knows, maybe you'll scale up, or you can have 10 ASICs, 20 ASICs be profitable or be functional for another business you're doing, like a greenhouse, or who knows, all sorts of applications. But that we love to stimulate those kinds of things. Shout
out to Steve Wood on that, because they're doing some pretty cool stuff up there. They're north of us. Steve's a good friend of mine.
Awesome.
That's I like the reuse thing. I always joke with people, like, in core essence, that what everybody does is kind of comical. It's like, what do? We convert electricity into heat, and then we have to cool the heat. That's all we do.
Yeah, finding a way to use that heat is a great resource. Sure. I mean, for me, it was funny. I've said this before, so I won't get into it. But I plugged my first ASIC in, and two things happened. It got hot and it got noisy, and so I had to find a way to like mitigate that noise. And like I had to open doors because it was too damn hot in my house.
That's and then you start tripping breakers and you start learning about things. And
I haven't tripped any breakers yet, thank gosh.
You're not running enough stuff yet.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. I'm not running enough in my house, man. My wife will kill me.
Oh, that's awesome.
But the longevity, we were talking about. I think the relationship between the airflow, pressure, and filtration, and the longevity of the machines is super important for people trying to figure out how to optimize their minds. So I'll just let you pick up, I think, wherever you think we left off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking through our HubSpot before this. I mean, we've worked with over 400 businesses. I would say, 50 of them or less are in business still. The thing everybody gets right. So we in the bear markets, this is kind of going away now because our scale is a little bit higher. We consult on our own products. We typically don't consult on other people's products unless if they're like very sizable. I'll be just transparent on that. But people get the electricity right almost every time. They might not build it as efficiently or inexpensively, or people focus all their energy on how do I get the electricity right. The two things that are overlooked are the air system and the network. And I won't get into the network. My CTO is not on the call. I don't want to say a bunch of stuff, make him upset if he listens to this. But the airflow system is like, you want to, just like with energy, you want to make sure that you are sized 125% of whatever you're going to be putting into it. This goes with electricity too. If you have a 100 amp circuit, 80 amps is your maximum. If you fuck with that, you will burn wires, you will damage equipment, you will ruin your longevity. We had this rule of 3 at Amazon, and it was the 100% load is 4 months, 90% load 4 years, 80% load is 40 years. And so it was like, do not exceed 80%.
Real quick, I don't want to interject for too long, but we know someone who built I think it was a 5 megawatt facility. I could be wrong. It might have been a 1 megawatt facility. And he, did everything quote unquote right and bought a breaker and powered it up to like full percent and actually burned down his entire 5 megawatt facility.
Oh no.
So
Oh no.
What you're speaking about is very important, that people realize, like, hey, underpower what you have.
Let me show you guys, just so I can show
Please
my
do.
cards, what we just went through. We're going through it right now. It's being swapped. I have a customer that's on this thing that unfortunately, and I'll explain what happened. So we got these 2 1 megawatt transformers. Look at the one that is completely burned. The fire department came. This happened like 3 weeks ago, right?
Mhm.
And I'm pitching 80%, and I want people to understand, like, there's a lot more to it. So in the NEC code book, I know it looks like the Stranger Things, doesn't it? Like look at these wires. I mean, they ripped back, like they fused together. I mean, here's a great shot of it.
Oh man.
Whoa.
Yeah. So here's what happened was we have a 2000 amp breaker or 2000 amp panel on this 1 megawatt. We went through all the meter data. The maximum this thing ran over the month before this happened was 749 kilowatts. So you're at 75%, call it. Well, what the fuck happened, right? If you look at the wires, we bought this site. This actually used to be the gigawatt site. The person who installed it tried to do some code book magic and use the 90-degree column rather than the 75-degree column, which you should not do under the data center regulations or UL 2755, which is the modular data centers. And so these wires are sized to do about 2100 amps, and we were throwing about 2000 amps at them. You're like, okay, well, you didn't exceed that. Well, there's ambient rules. When it gets hot, you have to or when it gets cold, there's multiplication factors. It was so hot, it was 110 the day this failed. You have to multiply by 0.88. So in reality, these could only do 1800 amps. And so the one thing we didn't check, which we checked all the wires in all of our facilities now.
I was gonna say you do now.
Is exactly. I mean, we know the transformer. We know we have a whole map of how all the components work in the facility. 80% is the rule limit, but we had this one component, which was the wire, and because it was installed in Washington State, U.S. regulations, was inspected, utility inspected it. We just assumed, right? But yeah, I don't mind showing those kind of cards because it's like, man, like they already told us we're going to be like an example.
Well, I think it's super important for our audience to understand like what can happen. I mean, you're dealing with high power, you're dealing with voltages that could cause things like that to happen. So doing your due
Mhm.
diligence to make sure that everything's correct, everything's proper is going to save you, you know,
For sure.
millions of dollars down the line, unless you want to go through that experience. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to go through that experience. So, you know, just what you're kind of speaking on is, you know, telling everyone, like, even if you think it's right because you trust the people who installed it properly, like, do your due diligence and make sure that you go through and you have it double checked, you know, by yourself or somebody who's competent in that arena. I mean, I wouldn't know what to look for, but I would want to hire someone to come in and double check everything, make sure that it's all up to standards. And then, you know, like you said, go to that 80% limit so that you don't exceed those limitations.
It, it sucks because that means you have to spend 125% of what you intend to on the paper. But
Yeah, but you
the,
would have to spend 300% if it burns down, right?
this rush job, yeah, this wasn't a rush job to get it back online, like this is just as quick as we can do it. Yeah, it would be a lot cheaper. You're right. So thank you for reminding me of that.
What is that? What is that thing that you told us, Dan, before when we did our preliminary conversation? You said, "Do it right or do it twice."
Do it right or do it twice.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
exactly.
is, I mean, I preach that, and look at what just happened, you know? Like all
Yeah,
we had to do was know that the wires in there were the size they were, and we would have run less.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and so the same thing goes for air. Is go on Bitmain's website, S21, 360 CFM. It's bullshit. I'm sorry, Bitmain, but it's bullshit. It's like 415 CFM at sea level. Are you operating at sea level, or are you operating at 3,000 feet? Are you in West Texas at 3,500 feet in Pecos? You know, that could be 460 CFM. And so when you build your facility, you're like 360 CFM times 10 miners. You know, then all of a sudden you turn it on. You're like, why are these all overheating? So in reality, if you were like, I see 360, let's go 500, right? Um, Airflow calculations are challenging. They're very hard. I mean, mining in general is hard. Um, but I look at it as the exact same thing. It's like what I just showed you. Like you
Yeah.
don't want your air system undersized, and then the machines are struggling.
Yeah, mining is really hard. Like I said
Mining's
earlier in the
really hard.
show, you don't like successful miners might only last one cycle or even a year and a
Right.
half or something. And so, and then unsuccessful miners, you know, even less, or have disasters happen, or, you know, poor business management or who knows what. But you've been able to stay around a long time. Can you tell us like how you navigated some of these huge kind of challenges or major pitfalls over 10 years, 11 years? That's an impressive like run for any Bitcoin company over that time, but mining especially.
I think the biggest thing is that the team that we built. We got a lot of really good guys on our team. Um, we got a lot of people who understand the market. We've had to give employees haircuts, and then we do come back and help them out on the opposite end. And you don't always retain people like that, but through the years, we have a team of people that understand the industry and are willing to be flexible. And then the next thing is, we work with people who also are flexible, and you have to stay flexible because when you get into a deal and it's a win-lose situation and you're about to lose your ass, a lot of people will just walk away, right? And I think the best thing to do is just to understand, like, this is a community industry. This is not dog eat dog. Like, it needs it, the right now there's definitely a very big feeling in the industry that it's like that. Like, look at Riot and Bitfarms. I mean, as entertaining as it is, it's like, what is that is wild. That is a wild story. Um, but we've gotten lucky, I would say, with our client list. Everyone's been very, very flexible with us. Um, if you really want the core answer, though, is like we always chase cheap electricity, and
Mhm.
um, that's given us a lot of downside leverage. Um, whether it's originally, I would say, like, if it's not under 3 cents, I'm not building. That's kind of become like 4.5 cents now. You're talking
Right.
about like inflation, energy prices, etc. So I look at it like a commercial scale facility over call it 5.5 cents, is starting to become like scary, viability wise. Um, and then we just make sure to have an intelligent blend of hosting and self mining, and make sure you've vetted clients correctly. I know that doesn't work for like home miners here, what I'm talking about, but and again, like when the market goes to shit, like you might need to help those guys out. Obviously, if they're like BK, you got to take their equipment, and then you have to deal with that, which is a whole different headache. But just really trying to stay as an operator, flexible and cooperative.
Yeah, tell us just for anyone in the audience who hasn't fully got their ear to the ground, tell the story in brief between Bitfarm and Riot.
Oh man, so Bitfarms is chugging along and they're doing a great job. We do actually quite a bit of business with them. I mean, they have a Washington State facility, and I work with those guys all the time. They're great, but they have some abilities for board members to be replaced based on the way that they're structured. I don't need to get too into the weeds, but Riot basically found a vulnerability in Bitfarms. They have the cash to buy them. So if you're a pubco, I can send you a letter saying like, here is my formal offer for acquisition. And you have to take that, even if it's like $1, right? You have to take that and put it in front of your board. But if you give someone this is exactly what Elon did with Twitter X.
Right.
And if you give someone a actual like, hey, look at our balance sheet. We have $900 million in liquid cash. And here's what we think your stock price is, which is 15% higher than where it was trading the day they got the note. Your board has to actually look at it as like a fair offer. There's ways public companies can be structured so this can't happen, but Bitfarms wasn't structured that way. And so, they turned it down. They said like our stock price is undervalued and that's not a good enough offer. And so what Bitfarms is going through now is Riot's trying to vote board members out, get their own guys in, so then they can control the house, and then they can make the acquisition go through. And we'll see where it lands. I know that we're looking at a deal with them potentially at the moment to like help them expand. Like they almost have like a hedged bet now, is they have like a guaranteed sale, or they can just try to use all their cash to expand and make their stock price go way up, and then the sale doesn't make sense. So in essence, I'm sure it sucks to be on the board of Bitfarms right now, but in essence, it's actually not, from the outside looking in, it's actually not a bad deal. You're kind of like leveraged against your growth, right?
Right.
If you successfully grow, boom, you guys are now huge. If you fail, you have this buyout option.
Yeah.
So like I actually look at it as a good thing, honestly.
Yeah, it's if you want to continue operating the business, maybe you don't like it, but like, yeah, it's a good thing for shareholders. It's a good thing for investors,
Got a nice floor now, a business value floor, right?
Tell us about the product. Show the product. Tell people how they can find it, and how it's going to be useful to them.
What I like about our product is like every version has improved on itself. The current product right now has solved a lot of like the air issues I was talking about and made the deployment speed faster and less expensive. We're an industrial enterprise focused product. It's a 4 megawatt, fully automated. You got switched and metered PDUs, which solve all of your efficiency and customer headaches. It gets hot, the chips fall apart with their efficiency. Your customers don't believe you, being able to like pull the data of like, here's the exact 15-minute by 15-minute intervals of electrical consumption. It's impossible to argue. For publicly traded companies, they can really get their efficiency numbers dialed in. It's a 968 unit, and by slots, I mean we're talking S19, S21. The S21 Pros are a little bit bigger, so they're only 880. But the unit's rated at 415 volt. I mean, what we do is basically build a giant Lego set. If you want, you have a green field next to a substation, power plant, whatever. We come in within 90 days, we turn that into a fully operating Bitcoin mine. Our current client focus is 10 meg plus for doing that. If you want to buy the actual product and do it yourself, then that's of course welcome. But there's a lot of competition in the container space. And so really where we're trying to position ourselves into the future is you got cash on your balance sheet, you're a finance company that isn't really looking to become a general contractor, engineer, build a product, go through the year plus, break a bunch of shit. You know, we've already done all of that for you. I'm going to be flat honest. I'm very transparent. Our product's not perfect. The next version will be more perfect than the current, and that'll go on forever. But we all have cell phones. I mean, we all remember when the first iPhone came out, it was a piece of shit.
Well, you iterate, like you said, you learn the best practices and what's better. And I think it's it's better to be honest about the
Yep.
fact that, hey, this isn't the best product that it could be, but we're continually striving to make it a better product.
It's gotten a significant amount better. Let me go ahead and I'll show you. I mean, I got some visuals here.
Great.
We love to see it.
Visuals are the best.
Yeah, the audience can really get an idea of what you're talking about here.
So this is a 10 megawatt site. I think I got this nice picture of a nuclear power plant in the background.
Oh, sweet. You got cheap power.
Yeah, I found it. So this is on 10 megawatts on 3/4 of an acre. And so that's one of the biggest advantages of our product is everything's nice and together. It's very, very automated and optimized. Like instead of having to go in, when machines get hot, sometimes the power supplies overheat, they shut down. You have to go unplug it, plug it back in. We use Foreman. Like I'm not going to try to say we have some specialized software. It's just Foreman. Shout out to Dan. But we have PDUs built into them. So if they physically go offline and they're no longer reachable over the network, the PDU itself actually power cycles. So we have all this automation stack to make the software work on the machines. We got 8 techs working in here with all these boxes and things like that. The machines are on the sides. We got positive pressure. Fans are coming through the floor. We didn't try to do this. It's loading. It's offline. We didn't try to engineer this, but we're in Arkansas, man. It floods. It freaking floods. We get water everywhere. And having these units lifted 4 feet off the ground, again, didn't expect that to be like a byproduct. It's a good byproduct.
Yeah.
We are protected from the elements.
And so you said the air comes up from the bottom throughout the top, and that's beneficial because heat rises, right? You see a lot of these people trying to exhaust the heat out the side.
So we're using the natural chimney effect. And so basically we come in through filters on the bottom. And right here, we're in a hot environment here. So we have on the other side of these, I wonder how far and I can zoom. These are actually evaporative coolers, right? So these are wet walls. On the other side of this, there's these pleated V's with that poly I was telling you guys about. So we kind of have 2 layers of filtration. Comes in, goes up through the machines. It's all positive pressure through the machines, and it wastes out. And it's as simple of a design as that. What's fantastic is when you're standing in here, and we're waiting on the sound study to come back from an actual third party because nobody trusts the manufacturer. They shouldn't, honestly. They shouldn't. You should not trust your manufacturer with items like that. It's only about 75 decibels right outside this thing. So whereas some of the competition of containerized spaces or data centers that are doing negative pressure, you'll be 100, 105, 110 sometimes. This is not a fancy sound fence by any means. This is literally just warehouse siding and sound blankets. Over here, where it's 60 decibels. When you get on the other side of the substation, about 300 feet away, it goes down into the 50s. And so you can install this. Don't do this. You can install this close to residential. Don't do that.
Yeah,
but you can't.
Never install close to residential, guys.
Well, this is a challenge that we're experiencing because our oil and gas partner has, they own land, they have leased land where they have their wells, and there's, they're in rural Wyoming, so there are neighbors, even though the wells are, one of them is landlocked inside. They have right of way, of course, but it's landlocked inside, like surrounded by some other private land, and there's a residence there. And so a challenge we're going to encounter is that resident has been a part-time resident there. They vacation there, or they live, primarily in another state, and they're going to be moving to
They're gonna be
permanently.
pissed.
So
They're gonna be pissed.
they're gonna be pissed. Now they're also building kind of behind a grove of trees a new home. So there's an existing home, and then they'll be building a new home protected a little bit by some trees. And so we're navigating this, and we know that it's going to be a challenge for the next like couple of years, how we all coexist there, right? So
I don't mind giving you some sound advice on how to get things cheaply remedied. Honestly, well, we can talk
yeah,
outside of this.
I'd love
but
that.
I can give you some stuff that you should do right away that'll knock your sound down a huge amount. So this facility I'm sitting on top of right now, right? Look what's right behind us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Wow.
we're literally against residential. And when we first built this, we just blasted them with noise. I mean, we had to learn how to do sound abatement. And I would say it's simple, but it's not. I think electricity is simple and airflow is simple, but like it's all about the stack of knowledge you build in your head before it becomes simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really where we're at. As I see like over and over Bitcoin sound issues all over the country, our products, because of the positive pressure, the way that the air is going up, you have to remember, because it's going up, so is the noise. Noise is just a wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting the wave going straight up, it's just going to continue up, and you might get some battering around it, but the issue you're talking about is a sones issue. And so sones is there's 3 different types of sounds. Nobody really talks about this. There's sones is the low wahs, decibels is the actual amount of sound, and then frequency is the buzz. And that's the one thing people fucking hate, is the buzz. But the sones is where like you can be 1,000 feet away from a data center and hear the like
Yeah.
The nice thing about, it's shilling still, the nice thing about our system is that our zone wave pattern is up and down because the fans are going vertical. And then we have the frequency blocker in the form of the roof. So if you called me and said, we're putting this thing in residential, I'm going to do a bunch of different abatement inside the machine, and I'm going to recommend a sound fence, higher than the height of it.
Mm-hmm.
Monticello, Arkansas, we actually have 3 of these running right next to residential. No complaints, nothing like that. We had to build it in accordance to that. But this is like a unit landing. So this is what I talk about, where it's like a Lego set, right? Because we have these panels on the outside, you can do you can do 4 transformers. We really recommend just doing 1 big transformer, unit out, makes it as simple and as cheap as possible. I mean, honestly, these things are cool, man. Like,
yeah.
let me show you one fully racked up. It's cool to build it. It's building products. I mean, there's nothing like it, honestly.
Yeah, the ingenuitive solutions that people are coming up with to, I'm constantly impressed that our industry is an industry in the first place, but then also, that it marries up so well with the kinds of innovations that these pioneers have forged ahead with. It marries up so well with all sorts of other industries and all sorts of other, abilities to solve problems in society. It's just,
sure.
It's mind blowing.
Yeah, for sure. I love that it's like it's a beautiful like symbiotic relationship between like engineering and finance, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how far can we push this? Which
Yeah.
is like, I mean, you can feel it too. Like at the conference last week, like you just feel the energy of that, right? Of like everyone's working to push the limits of this as far as they can. Like it was really cool to see all the new immersion techs and stuff like that too. So I'm still not sold, but I think air is still free.
Air is still free. All right.
Air is still free, man.
No, those immersion units were pretty dope. I saw a couple of them in there, and I was like, man, these are sweet.
Honestly, man, I walked around to everyone. I know a lot of those guys, and so many of them are in code compliance. I will not say which ones, but there are so many of them that were code violations, and I just like walked everybody through what mistakes they had made. They thought I came over to buy the product, right? I'm like, listen, let me talk to somebody, like, and let me walk you through why this is a code violation. And it's not like I'm trying to be a dick, which a couple of them definitely thought I was trying to
Yeah.
be a dick. I was like, more like, listen, like, I don't want anyone to get hurt. I want you guys to be successful,
Yeah.
because and I'll say this, we're actually building a 2 megawatt immersion facility, but like, it's because it's a super, super specific use case.
Mm-hmm.
Until I see the absolute requirements for immersion, we're going to keep going here. It's so much more
Yeah.
flexible.
Going on back into the home miner side of things, like I definitely see immersion as like something that's going to help the home miners, like small immersion tanks, because you can transfer that
man.
heat so much farther. I don't want to get into like, oh, why someone should do air immersion or hydro, in like a large scale facility, because I'm not versed enough in that world. But I definitely think immersion for home miners is really cool because you can tie it into so many different solutions and stuff like that. But
It's also it's so damn simple too.
it really is, and everything's off the shelf.
Yeah, it's
You
all
don't have to
shelf.
have a
You just
whole system built out. So
for sure, and they're getting a lot. Some of the manufacturers are getting a lot more understanding that like these are going to go in people's houses, and
Yeah.
like the system I have at home, like unless if it's 30 degrees C, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, I push my chips farther than I should. Don't do that with a home miner, but the fan doesn't even really kick on. Like,
yeah,
it is a dead silent. Like my garage used to sound like a beehive for I don't know 7 years.
you got away with it for 7 years.
I had to do a lot of shit like you do, like back there with that miner.
Bro,
like,
I didn't get away with it for 7 days.
I think for her it was the heat. It was the heat.
No, it was the noise, man. She came inside the door and she looked at this thing sitting on the counter and she was like, "Get that thing out of my house right now, right now." And I was like, "What's wrong with it?" She's like, "Do you not hear that thing when you pull up in the driveway?"
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, like if you have a utility, I'm not saying do bad things, but if you have a utility that's the immersion just looks like a radiator outside your house.
Yeah,
You're never
exactly.
gonna know.
Exactly. So anyways, let's, we're coming close on time real quick. I've got a question that I ask everyone. You've been in the space for a long time and everybody's definitely got different perspectives on it, different viewpoints. So I like to get like the wide range of answers. So Daniel, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
Oh man, it's like the most beautiful piece of code I've ever seen written. It's I look at it as financial freedom for people who are sub 55. It's a tool to unlock what people desire. We have this broken financial system. You can't go just get a job and have a college account for your kids anymore. And it's like power to the people, put it back in their hands, right? So I very much hope you see some of the politicians want like a government-backed treasury. I hope that becomes a staple, and that means that the ride's not over, right? And
it's only just beginning. For
sure. And so like if you're looking for a way out of the grind, I mean that's what Bitcoin is to me. This is a hobby, man. I get to talk to you guys and get paid for it. Like, I mean, honestly, like you go to these conferences, like, and for anybody who doesn't get to experience this, I mean, it's like, it's intoxicating. Like, you wake up every day feeling like you have like a purpose in life.
Well, the energy, you talk about the conferences, like the energy at Nashville, like it was palpable. I mean, you could just, everybody's running around talking about what they love, talking about Bitcoin. I mean, there was the shit coiners there. They get in everywhere. But at the end of the day, like as my first conference, I was like, this is why I'm here, because of all of these people. And you kind of mentioned it earlier, is like everybody coming together in this industry to build something and build it on Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin is that piece that ties everything together and, allows people to project their power into the future, which we couldn't do before.
100%, man. And that's why, I don't mind saying it. Like, if you're interested in our product or honestly just picking my brain for 15 minutes, Telegram, I'm just Data Center Dan. It's really easy to remember. Check our product out to artemistech.io, but I'm always down to talk to people. Don't be afraid.
Yeah, Dan's a really nice guy. People like hit him up, talk to him about some air filtration and noise mitigation. Like he's gonna help. So
Yeah.
Make sure the machines I buy secondhand are clean, guys.
yeah. Well, with that, guys, this was the Build a Mind podcast. I think we're in episode 25 now, 26. So, we're getting up there. It's been a lot of fun. This has been a really incredible journey for Will and I to get to talk with such incredible people who really know the space, really understand. So if you guys are enjoying the podcast, if you like what you see here, please like, follow, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit us up on Fountain. If you send us a boost, the highest boost, we're going to be making sure that we, give you guys a shout out and stuff like that. We always appreciate the support and stuff. Podcasting is not an easy job. It's not super difficult either, but it's it's one of those things where we really appreciate you guys just, supporting us and all that stuff. So if you like what you see, please boost us, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you so much.
You, Dan.
Yes,
All right,
thank you,
guys.
Dan.
Take care.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.